This is an Egyptian Ka statue. There are quite a few different representations, but one of the most famous ones is the one of King Tut that's shown here. And if I'm not mistaken, they have two different ones of him, which actually doesn't make any sense when you find out what a Ka statue is about, because there could only be one or it would be over confusing. Other people have made the connections that a lot of the artifacts and things found in King Tut's tomb aren't actually King Tut's. They're a conglomeration of his stuff and Akhenaten's and others that are put in there. It's the reason that he has more than one bed, a few different chariots. His famous chair is actually Akhenaten's chair, where it shows the Aten's sun rays coming down and ending in hands. Yeah, so that's Akhenaten and Nefertiti. That's not King Tut, but they, of course, put all this together and said it was, but it's more than one people's treasure, or it's what's left of two or three people's treasure and what they gave King Tut in his. And you can see the cobra on the front of this. It looks radically different, and it looks like somebody photoshopped this somehow to turn a little more orange than the gold of a golden color. And you'll see there's a different one in this, but it looks like a Caucasian wearing blackface. And I've had people say that before, and I remember even a teacher referring to it. But what it really is the shadow of oneself. The Egyptians believed there were 5 essences in all of everything that makes up you. And so you have a soul and a shadow and all of these things that make it up. You know, it's kind of like Peter Pan, and he lost his shadow and you had to get it back. It's literally that. In fact, a lot of people have said that's where that comes from. But in reality, whenever people think of ghosts or undead, there's still some things about them, like they don't cast a shadow, so they don't have a shadow. Or you could say that vampires don't cast a reflection. Like if you stood next to one and looked in the mirror, you'd see yourself and they wouldn't be there, right? Well, this statue was a place for that life essence to dwell, that shadow. So there's a Ba and a Ka and a couple of other things. And basically, the Ka statue here, sometimes, as you see here, and there are other examples we'll look at here in a minute, are a representation of the darkness of night, of space, all that type of thing. And it's also the reason that the eyes on a lot of these sarcophaguses and things are shown with dilated black eyes, just black eyes. They don't have a black center and brown or green or blue, like there's a lot of them that have blue eyes, especially in the earliest dynasties. I'll show you here in a minute, but I'm sure that carries on through, whether the artificers were able to make it anymore and so on. But this is something that is an odd representation, but they used color for imagery, and a lot of times, just like they have red ochre males and pale women's. And people have wondered why King Tut's shown in these different depictions and stuff going on. Well, the red ochre males and pale women idea is that females, after causing mass civilization, weren't actually having to work or go out in the sun and all those things, and they could be kept as pale as possible. Whether an Egyptian was as pale as they quite often show the women or not, getting out in the sun from time to time, or if they covered themselves so they tried to not, which is still held socially acceptable in the whole area there. But the males would have more of a red ochre appearance, and it's nothing that's like superficial just to the Egyptians or special of them. Everybody around the Mediterranean, including the Minoans and Etruscans and the Greeks themselves, and Sumer and Persia and everybody, even people in the Levant and ancient Anatolia, drew red ochre males and pale females, and that's from that same ideal that you would get. In fact, in art, it's still shown through the Renaissance, and quite oftentimes women are keeping themselves pale. Men were drawn with more other colors. So there's nothing really different with that. But when somebody would try to use this as an explanation, or saying the Egyptians were a certain people or not a people, and use one of these statues, would be hilariously self-exposing, knowing that if you just look into Ka statues, what it actually means and what it shows. So let's look at a few more of these representations of Ka statues here, because there's quite a few of them, but a lot of them are different. In the earliest of dynasties, again, like that's the picture that we were just looking at there, but you can tell this Ka statue is different, and a lot of people say this is Akhenaten and that this is Tutankhamun. Other people say that Tutankhamun's getup that goes on him right there was taken off of another statue and another person, and so on. So once they started figuring out that some of that isn't his that's in there, and they figured out that the golden head mask that everybody knows about, it's the figure of Egypt basically now, that had a different face in it, or that they made it separately to look like his face and placed that in the whole headgear. And people have made comments on who they thought that was, but there are a lot of these statues, especially in the earliest dynasties, that are actually done out of sacred wood. Like this is Hor Abweri, and some people say this is supposed to be Hor Aha, who would have been the second pharaoh of all and stuff, in his depiction in an old wooden statue. But if you'll look closely, he has these crystal blue eyes that will follow you around the room. We'll look at that a little more here lately, but this is, I believe this one is sycamore wood, and some of them are sycamore and some of them are yew wood. Yew wood's famous for supposedly when an elf dies, up sprouts a tree of yew wood, and that's what the incredible bows and arrows were made from back in the time, or the bows were made from. Arrows is different. But that's a depiction of a Ka statue there, and here's another view of it here, so you can get a good idea of the phenotype and the way that they look here. Looks like my friend Eric. Anyhow, there's the chin beard and everything that we know about, but these crystal blue-eyed statues are in the earliest dynasties all the way up to the first intermediate period, and then there's only a few statues found after that. This is attributed to the 12th dynasty, and so there were a few different ones that apparently still had some leftovers from before that they never used, or took other statues that we can never find now and took the eyes out of them to make his eyes in the statue, or things like that. Another famous one is the bust of Nefertiti. She still has one blue eye left. Her other one is gone, but the one that's left that's there is covered over by wax, but you can still see it. You get the right angle, just like you get the right angle of this, and you can easily tell. So a lot of Ka statues are done in that way. Other statues are done strangely, almost like a Milky Way effect, like pardon me, like this statue, where it has a swirling going through it, which is even more difficult to pull off. And everybody talks about how this is, a swirled, and it almost looks like some type of cosmic thing that's going over it. It's pretty cool. They make a lot of vases out of this type of stuff and other things too. But this is a Ka statue of somebody who's real famous. The second biggest pyramid that's there is actually this person, and they say that the Sphinx was recarved to look like his face. A lot of people can see it. And they've made comparisons and stuff, and a super Egyptian made a comparison video where they took a picture of this looking about that angle and went out and looked at the Sphinx and traversed them over each other, slowly pivoting back and forth, making it opaque, and you could really see that that's pretty much what he was, and even from the side and going, yeah, so that's kind of what his nose would have looked like. And that's kind of like some of the drawings of the ancient depictions of it, where it showed it before it had already started falling apart. Everybody says it was Napoleon's people that did it, and but it was well before that, and actually done from Islamic source that caught their women trying to give some praying to it, because it they were having drought or whatever, and they tried to pray to it or whatever, and he turned around and got pissed off and blew the nose off of it, and also the chin beard, but it was still left there. So there's still that piece of the chin beard thing, but you can't just really attach on something that weighs that much back up onto his chin. Here's another guy in one of these early statues. I believe this is yew wood, and this is copper. Not copper like the metal, but people have said that may be what it is, but it's copper. And so he actually has that in his name there. You see these pin squares that are right here in his shoulders? Like you can articulate his shoulders. The piece of his shoulders stuck in here, and then that pin held it into place. So you can take things and pin arms out like this, or elbows and different things, and make it articulated. Back then they had pretty good reasonable facsimiles of what the guy would actually look like. Slowly but surely through the first intermediate period, and people started almost being a photoshopped version of themselves with very little variation. In fact, most of the statues that'll have any variation, they'll actually pinpoint it out, you know, like cincheret statues and so on like that. But these Ka statues you can see here, there's a lot of them are recreated over and over and over again, and are different angles on the same statue. And you can see King Tut's done 4 or 5 times there, just in that little roll we run there. And you see Horaha's statue, or Hor-Abre, as they call him, from the 12th dynasty. But you can see these Ka statues where some of them are painted black like this, other ones are just done in a wood and things like that. So different times they did different things, but the symbology is really meant to be the same. It's meant to be the shadow of oneself, if you will, or something along that line. You know, because the bird thing that's right here, that's the Ba, right? And it's funny how it looks like an angel and this type of concept. If you look at all these old ancient religions from all around this, all these people had winged people, and the ideals and things they had are really variations on the theme of the same concept. I guess that's for other videos though. But you can see this statue. In fact, over there at the far left, that's a Ba statue that's there, and it even has an ibis, which is like Thoth, next to it here. But Ka statues are generally either going to be in a dark stone or woods, and a few different types of woods. Copper that's right here really looks a lot like my dad, especially when you get him in a certain pose or looking a certain way. And not my dad at the end, of course, and whenever he was older and stuff, but whenever he's the youngest that I have memories of him and pictures and old pictures of him, bang, there it is. So, and he had blue eyes too. So it's amazing how many of these have blue eyes, but you can actually look at things like reserve heads, and you don't have to even put in the word Egypt. You can just put reserve heads in, and they're like, this is what's called reserve heads, and it's the earliest dynasties of Egyptians. And they look like elves in a lot of cases and weird things, and it's very simple to see their phenotype and what type of people we're looking at here. Who the ancients, when they looked at it, said it was a Nordic type people ruling over a Mediterranean civilization, basically, which actually would have been somewhat mixed, but the nobility seemed to show up more. And then they showed that around about the 18th dynasty, how it came to its former glory of being there before. That's even in papers that are written before World War II, and everybody was in congruence with each other and knew that to be a fact. But in a modern day, people just want to lie and act ambiguous, and it's incredible how much weird play that people try to have over these early civilizations. especially people that didn't have civilization until much, much later, and then the people brought it to them, and it took a long time to even try to get going, and some people would say they don't quite have a hang of it yet. But if someone was to use one of these statues or darkened statue to try to make a point that would be a lie, that would be pretty self-exposing, and yet that's what we have here. Whenever we look at this without history, this is a guy I've done a couple of videos on here, so he wants to talk about things and mislead people and see if he can get you to believe something stupid by showing you pictures like this. So he decides to say cultural continuity between the Nubio-Kemetic civ, I'm guessing we're saying civilization, but we're too cool for the word, may not have known how to spell it correctly, and Africa cannot be denied. On the left is Shep-in-Mek, and on the right is Ghana Kente. Kente is the name of a type of fabric that black people make in a modern day form here, and it really doesn't have an extreme history into it. In fact, it's believed by trade it was brought to them, and you can look into that. But if you ever watched Roots, which was a lie movie that they made out trying to make white guilt and crazy things, Alex Haley actually was caught stealing the story from a white man who already wrote a book about it, and he had to pay reparations, watch out for that word, to the man, because he stole places, names, and everything, and Kunta Kinte would have just been one simple name, didn't have a last name. The Kente is a type of fabric that he got it off of. Anyhow, not to go off into that. So on the left here, we're seeing a Ka statue, and I'm going to zoom in here, watch out. Well, it's not letting me. But in that fact, this almost looks like Buddha. Regardless of whatever color skin it is, you could make it purple if you wanted to. But the phenotype is nowhere near the same. In fact, here we see somebody with the ears pointing back and everything, and then here we see very small ears like what's found in sub-Saharan Africans. So this is a Bantu type person from Ghana, apparently. And this is Shep-in-Mek. And if you look it up the way that he has it spelled right here, you won't find anything. And in fact, if you try to edit it and make it someone else, you'll never find it. And who knows how he found this statue and ended up putting that name on it, but it might have had that name on it. But actually the way that's spelled is not normal Egyptian, so something's wrong there anyhow. Another thing that's wrong with this statement is he says Nubio-Kemetic, as if the Nubians and the Kemites were the same people, or even if they were exactly the same, or there was a connection and continuity between them. If you'll look at it, there never really was until much later on, and then they were ruled over by viceroys of Kush and things like that. Wiki that. I don't want to have to go into that right now. But Nubians aren't kin to the people from Ghana in any way, shape, or form, and they didn't even know each other existed. All archaeology points to this fact and truth, and all of the genetics that we've done on all the ancient Egyptians, they were all Caucasians, a lot of times with blonde and red hair, blue eyes if you already seen, and a Nordic type of skull going on, other than Mediterranean Caucasians and North African Caucasians. So how many were a Ghana person or a Bantu like this? Well, he's admixed anyhow, but the answer is 0. They didn't even know Egypt existed. But this guy who, it's crazy, he calls himself Without History, showing you that they don't really have any, and so we're gonna lie about everything and try to connect ourselves to a Ka statue on a sarcophagus from, it looks like, the Middle Kingdom, of a lady, and not even a man. And then he says, the cultural continuity, I'm going to try to pull this on you because, see, it's got green and red and purple and all these colors. And you look on here and it doesn't have all those colors, but it's a yellow background, red stripes. This is zags, that's not even the same. Crazy though, if you'll go down and look at what people are saying, they're like, weird thing, when I was a little kid, I asked a teacher if the colorful patterns on sarcophagi could be cloth, And I was told no, and I gave up that idea until today. This is done by an Afrocentric. You can see there looking over his glasses at somebody. Oh, they hearted that one. Khufu is still a common name in Ghana. That's the name of the largest pyramid. No, it's not Khufu. No, it's Khufu. And that's really the Greek name of it. So, Cheops, you know, and Khufu was the other name. Khufu's granddaughter, you can find on the walls of the tombs, are actually drawn with kind of a strawberry blonde hair. It's been commented a bunch of times, and that would say that Khufu and his lineages after that would be holding a redhead Caucasian gene that goes on there, and it takes two. Wow, this gives me chills. Thanks for sharing real black history. Love it. Well, no, you don't like real black history, because if you love on something like this, like trying to claim you somehow have a heritage connected to ancient Egypt whenever your people didn't even know it existed, would be pretty pathetic. But that's all we can get from them. It's time we take charge of our own history, they say next to that. We need to set the narrative of our own story, our history, the frickin' way. Well, no, if you take charge of yours and start making up stuff, like what's going on now, you end up being the clown on the world stage. And the world and all archeology and everything points to, you didn't even know this existed, so why do you keep strutting around like you did something, or you've got connections to it? Oh, you're just, because they've got dark skin and you're taught to think light, dark, like dark, and you can't think straight. Here, so you start claiming anybody that's got darker than a tan. It's real self-exposing. People are watching this. Looks like his twin. Who, that lady? That sarcophagus is the lady. Hey, this is scary. Who are we? What's been hidden from us? Not the fact that you were the Egyptians, that's for sure. Or that a Ka statue meant somehow that person turned black. Beautiful fabric from Ghana is amazing. I couldn't help saying that. I can't help saying that either. I like that fabric too, but the dyes that they make that out of and originally bought to them was from a long, long time ago. Look up Acellar Man and Wiki there, and you'll probably find out something that shows you a much recent forming to it, though. But here they keep talking about a bit of a stretch. Those are stripes on the sarcophagus, and it's a black guy saying it, but he looks a little nerdy, a little Urkel, and he's not playing the stupid game. Like this word right here. When and only when we stop worshiping Satan and his bastard son, we will begin to understand our higher level of consciousness and spirituality, because understand this, Satan gets his glory from bondage, incarnation, and slavery. Now, hasn't that been our history? Well, it really is the only one that you want to talk about, and then you want to play a victim on that idea too, whenever it was your own people capturing your own people and selling them off as unwanted just for beads and alcohol or less, like a drive-through slave mart. But you don't want that narrative. You want all these other narratives and so on. And so you're going to end up calling the God of the Bible that you've been helped raise up on Satan now and all these other things. So what the fuck? Seriously. So this person always wonders in video games, how come they're Caucasians and not black Africans? Well, Africa was named after and by Caucasians. So the reason that they look like that is because they looked like that. Yeah. That no matter what you try to pull with, well, the red ochre, well, what about the pale females they always want to leave out? Oh, you can't, oh, they weren't white. Well, DNA stepped up to the plate and says, yeah, they were kin to people. Now check this out. This shows you who's connected to who. Ancient Levantines and Anatolian people, that's Turkey or Asia Minor, right up there on the side of the Mediterranean, just below the Greeks here. Ancient people living there, and not the modern ones, but modern people living in West European areas. Isn't that amazing? I think so. So how many Uh, we was King Funks and shit. How many Bantu people are there that were even Nubians? Oh, that's zero. Oh, well, why are they the ones that keep talking about it? Because they don't have a history. They think their history is just about slavery and then their own people in a pre-Neolithic state with no real actual civilization here, running around playing chase me, eat me, and so on in the Congo jungle, and wouldn't come out of it until the late Bantu expansion. That was well after Admix, though. Look up that Asillar, man, and you'll see something that happened at 4400 BC. And click on Iwilira or something else in there where they show you, well, they found some older ones, but what does it look like? What's a small, still extant Homo erectus type with a little football-looking head and small cranial capacity and stuff? More like a Homo erectus form. Then it got admixed by people that had E1B genetics and so on, but they don't want to go with any of that. That's truth and science and everything else. In fact, they start calling everything racist if it doesn't agree with them, that they were the ancient Egyptians and not themselves. How self-exposing could it be? Well, that's pretty self-exposing right there. I mean, that pretty much gives it. So let's look here at what the Independent has put out here. And the ancient Egyptians were more closely related to Europeans than modern Egyptian scientists claim. It's because way after post-Roman times, they started getting infiltrated with genetics that are different than their own. And one they point out is sub-Saharan Africans finally showed up. And whenever they did, it changed the genetics that are people there. And then, of course, the Arabic slave trade, and they got admixed, and they've admixed back into the population and so on. And they say they have about a 1% match with the ancient Egyptians because of that. Arabic admixed and sub-Saharan admixed that wasn't there. Well, who are the ones that are actually closest related? Well, ancient Anatolians and modern European people. Let me know what you think down below, but Ka statues and what they mean and what it definitely doesn't mean. Peace.